live stream has started.
Thank you. I'm not sure if we have all of our board members, so I'm a little hesitant to get us fully started until we have everyone. I think it's I don't see everybody. I think the only board members right now are myself and Fareed.
Yeah, I don't think you have quorum.
So we're just, for anyone who's dialing in, thank you for being on time. We're just going to wrestle up the members. I think we're expecting Jim, and I know Maureen. I wonder if they're having any trouble signing in, just because I did actually have a little bit of a challenge this time. I think I was clicking the link. Hopefully Maureen and Jim don't have any.
I'm just checking in with both of them. Linda, I'll be right back.
Yeah, okay. And I think, I think we're expecting one of the counselors
Maureen
as well.
Just joined. Maureen just joined,
okay.
I believe.
Perfect. I'm not having a great screen outlook right now.
If I could, Janani, I know you're there from Councillor Thompson's office. Are we waiting on Councillor Thompson as well?
He may join a little bit later because I think he's later in the agenda, right?
Okay, great. Thank you. Just wanted to check. Thank you so much.
Jim's just logging in.
Okay, great. We'll just wait for Jim, and then we'll have welcome Maureen. And there's Councillor Morley. Welcome, Councillor Morley. That's fantastic. Okay, I think we're good to go. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy September. I hope everyone had a good summer. It feels like just a moment ago that we were meeting, and we're looking forward to getting started. It always feels like a new year for me in September. So welcome to the new year for many of you. My name is Linda Jackson, and I have the great pleasure of chairing this Quality Tenant Engagement Committee. And I'm just going to start with the land acknowledgement and make a few general remarks before we get going. For those of you new, we like to take the moment every meeting that the board meets and the committees meet to situate ourselves on this land that we're so fortunate to actually be sitting on at this point. So today, Seniors Housing acknowledges that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. And it is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaty signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. We also like to take a moment to do an African ancestral acknowledgement. Toronto Seniors Housing acknowledges all treaty people, including those who came here as settlers, as migrants either in this generation or in generations past, and for those who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. We pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent. And I just want to personally take a moment to acknowledge that this is the month that on September 30th, is the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. I think that we can all spend time doing land acknowledgements and not take the seriousness of the reconciliation work that we all need to do. And I would like to encourage everyone to take some time during September to think about this. I am hoping that the Seniors Corporation Housing is actually doing something to recognize September 30th, and that we can talk about that at some point. But I also think that this is for me, it's a personal journey too, of my own reconciliation and work that I need to continue to do, and I commit to continuing that work. Just a few remarks. Today we have a busy agenda again. At the end of our agenda, we actually have a presentation from Councillor Thompson from Ward 21 Scarborough Centre. And I just do want to acknowledge that this is not the report that they're bringing forward is a report that his office completed, focused on seniors in his ward. And it's really focused on all seniors, not just actually seniors that are in Toronto Seniors Housing. And we're honored that he actually wanted our group, because of our expertise and particularly our focus on equity and seniors living in Toronto Seniors Housing, to hear the report and give some suggestions to him and his team in terms of moving that forward. I do want to reflect that it is not just actually focused on seniors housing. So it will be an interesting information session at the end of our meeting. I want to welcome Councillor Amber Morley. It's so nice to have you here. We're really pleased that you've joined our committee. Your background is terrific, and maybe we'll have a moment to hear from you. And we also want to acknowledge that this is Maureen's first official meeting as one of our tenant reps. But Maureen is no stranger. I think she's probably has had better attendance than our board members have had pretty good attendance, but Maureen has probably had more attendance as somebody an engaged tenant, and we're just so delighted that you've joined as well, Maureen. You'll see, particularly for our new members, that we have a lot of agenda items that generally come to this meeting, and a lot of content. We try not to get deep into the weeds of each report because it's tempting, because it's just so interesting, and I think people actually bring a wealth of experience to this. But we ask people to actually to think about how we can actually move this forward as a board, and often actually our amazing staff members, and what you'll see, we are well supported at this committee, can bring things forward. We typically also have an update from OACH. Today, we're not going to have that update. We're in the process of thinking about what's the right cadence or timing for the OACH reports. I think that they can come at any point if there's a significant change and where we need to actually see something. What we're seeing, and it probably speaks to the strength of the office, is a fair amount of consistency in the reporting. So it can sound like it's the same report over and over. So they're going to come to our next meeting, and we're going to determine how frequently they come. And I think you should know everybody else, but Councillor Morley or Maureen, if there's any comments you want to make before we get started, I welcome you to just introduce yourselves.
Thank you so much, Linda. I'll quickly jump in and pass the baton over to Maureen, but I just wanted to say how thrilled I am to be joining this great group. I'm proud to represent Etobicoke Lakeshore, Ward 3, as a fairly new councillor, but did work previously in community health as a health promoter and in a lot of different capacities that certainly centered our seniors and worked towards well-being in collaboration with other senior serving organizations. So I'm just so thrilled to be joining the team, Jill, Grant, and all the wonderful folks who keep this group organized to share my experience and hopefully impact things positively. So thank you for the warm welcome, Linda. Glad to be with you all. I apologize, I'm between things. I ran late at a site visit, so taking it from the car, but really, really glad to be joining you all, and look forward to listening and learning. Thank you.
Fantastic. And we were really excited when we heard that we were lucky enough to get you on our committee. So we look forward to that. And Maureen, do you want to say a few words before we get started?
Oh, just that I'm happy to be here. Look forward to the ongoing good work together, and welcome to Councillor Morley. Not just to this format, but also I know I've spoken with a few of your constituents who are also very happy to have you on board. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Maureen, and thank you. We were also delighted to have you on our committee. So this is a strong group, and so moving forward, and we're always open to feedback. We hope that these meetings are actually meeting the needs of of our committee and actually our tenants. So any feedback as we go forward is welcome. So with that, I want to ask for an approval of the public meeting agenda. If I could have an approval. If there's any changes.
So approved, Linda.
Thanks, Fareed. And a seconder, Maureen, can I ask you to second? Thank you. All in favor? Great. You'll be seeing that for the members, I'll be asking you to approve quite a bit because we're a relatively small group when it comes to actually members at this point. But we'll get into the swing of it. Before we go any further, I want to check to see whether there's any conflict of interest. If anyone has any conflict of interest, don't see any declared. Okay, terrific. So we will move on. Once again, I want to welcome everyone who is joining us from the live stream, and we appreciate you taking the time to join in. And we're going to move on to item 5, which is the approval of the minutes of the Quality Tenant Engagement Committee. That was the last meeting was July 17th, 2023. I believe Jim, you were there, and Fareed, any changes or additions to the minutes?
Not from me, Linda. Thanks.
Okay, so hearing none, I'll maybe ask Fareed and Jim if you don't mind approving them. Great, all in favor? Terrific. And we're going to go on to item 6, which is the action item review. And I'm really pleased with this action item review because it's really nice when an action items actually are checked off. Did anyone have any questions about the action items that were circulated? There's a number of them. And as you can see, actually, there's 10 items, and as we're looking at it, 10 out of the 11 have been completed. We still are looking at getting providing data on the rapid rehousing program through the city, and Brad is working on that. But everything else, I think, is actually completed. Is that?
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure, Maureen.
Number 9, and I guess this goes to you, Brad. The weekly use of space schedule that says completed. I'm not familiar with that. Where would I find more information on that?
Thanks for the question, Maureen. That would actually go to Arlene and the Programs and Partnerships group that supervises the community community services coordinators.
Okay.
Thanks, Brad, and thanks for the question, Maureen. We are in the midst of getting many of the buildings' schedules up and posted. So it may not have hit all of the buildings yet, but the team is working diligently to have schedules posted so that there's access and information about how the rooms are being used. But we certainly do not have full coverage yet.
Okay, and is there somewhere where I can find? Do you have like a blank format?
Why don't I follow up with you directly on that, Maureen?
Thank you.
Sure.
That's great. Great questions. And any other questions? And I guess the one item that we're still working on, Brad, we will have any timelines for that one?
Yeah, through the chair. We've recently been able to include the rapid rehouse designation within the Yardi platform, which is what we use to track tenancies. So we're now able to go back and look at those tenancies and where they came from and what the source was as far as what the state of the current tenancy is. And we're in discussions with the city on reporting for that.
Okay, great. Thank you. So that will continue on as our action items going forward, but the other items will come off. And I'm sure that we'll create some actions from this meeting. So I'll move on. That was an item for information. And I did actually want to take the opportunity to also welcome Jill Beta, who has joined us as the interim CEO. And she's gotten very engaged with this committee and with all of the committees in a very short period of time. For those of you on the line, you may know that Tom Hunter is temporarily providing support as the interim CEO to Toronto Seniors, Toronto Community Housing, and we're very fortunate to have Jill, who has tremendous experience with the seniors portfolio, providing interim support. And I'm going to put it over to Jill to provide an update on activities.
Thanks so much, Linda. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the welcome. This is my first meeting with the Quality and Tenant Engagement Committee. And so briefly, I'm delighted to be back here with this tremendous team, small but mighty team, as I call them. And I'm happy to be here, keeping things moving and keeping things steady over the coming months while Tom is over at TCHC. I've seen so much progress with the team and the work that has been accomplished since I was last here. Some may recall that I was with the seniors housing team for 2 years back in 2020 through the period of COVID, and returned to the city and have just come back. So I cannot believe what this team has been able to accomplish since the last time I was here. We're doing some great work, and the team is working very hard on translating our interim strategic directions into actual performance and plans with staff. And so that's one of our key priorities as we're working through the rest of this year and into the following years. We're also, as a priority, working on beginning to plan for our 2024 goals quickly, as well as getting ready to round up our 2023. We are in the heat of the 2024 budget planning cycle with ourselves, TCHC, and the city. And there will be an upcoming consolidated budget, again, just like last year, that will go to the city in the next short time period. And we will be bringing back more information on the budget to the Audit, Finance, and Risk Committee and the board as the process continues in the next short while, few months. And later this fall, we are going to be launching, and we're happy to share that we're going to be launching our first staff experience survey. We recently hired a vendor, and they are working with our staff to support the planning for that survey, and we will again be sharing more information. On the operations front, I won't steal too much of Brad's thunder here, but I just wanted to share a couple of key highlights. We have entered into an exciting agreement with Humber College, and Brad and his team are going to be welcoming 2 co-op students from their alternate dispute resolution graduate program. And those students in working with us will focus on working with our complex tenancy team and also doing sessions with tenants and staff related to conflict in the vertical living context specifically, and how we work through and adopt mediation basics. And so we're looking forward to their contribution and to also helping them with their continuing education and pursuits. We also have tenant town halls underway, and the response and turnout has been great. Brad will provide a little more information on that in the next few minutes. And we are also involved in recruitment for our vacant regional manager role, and are also working on the expansion of the pest control unit. I'm pleased to share that right now our annual unit inspections is at 62% completed, or roughly 8,500 units inspected. And there's an additional 1,214 in follow-up. And so we're making tremendous progress as it relates to annual unit inspections on the operations front. On tenant engagement, again, Arlene will share more information, but on September 19th and 20th, we will be hosting the first of 2 co-design sessions with tenants, providers, and staff. We've had about 79 participants across all the stakeholder groups, with tenants representing about 56% of all the attendees. And then the second session will be held on October 3rd and 4th. We will be posting all the results and outcomes of those sessions so that participants can take a chance to review them and provide final input before we share and present the final information on the sessions back to this committee and the board for final approval in December. And I want to thank Maureen and Jim for their continued and ongoing guidance and support to the project team with regards to that work. We are also going to be launching a tenant experience survey later this year. So we have recently retained Forum Research to support the work, and they will be working with us to get out and start conducting surveying across all the tenants. And the survey will serve as a means in which for us to understand the tenants' lived experience as tenants, assess their perception of the quality that we provide with our services, and also to identify areas where we have the opportunity to continue to improve. And then we are also going to be doing our onboarding with the vendor for this work, and we'll be providing more details coming in the future meetings. So that's my update for today, Linda.
Thanks, Jill. Any questions from anyone? It's a lot. All right, hearing none, it was perfectly clear, or people are still thinking about their questions. And actually, this leads on to a lot of future information on the agenda. So thank you, Jill, for jumping in and keeping us going. We look forward to working with you as we go forward into the fall. So that's an item for information, so we don't actually have to have an approval. I think we'll move on to the operational dashboard. And for those of you new, and for those of you on the line, this is actually we've been working on this dashboard as a mechanism to try to describe the key activities that are of importance to tenants. And we track this at every meeting, and we track where there's changes to it. And our staff will provide some update to that. Feel free to ask questions as we go through this. I'm going to pass it over to Brad to go through the latest update.
Thanks, Linda. So in the package that the board members and committee members received was the operations dashboard that we've been using, as Linda said. Goes over some very high level quickly things. Arrears is in the top left, vacancy rates and vacancy numbers are in the top right, and then work order service levels and administrative service levels are on the bottom. And with the next few slides, just go into all these numbers in a little bit of a greater detail. With regards to the arrears, the rent park balance was at the end of the month was 1.768 million. This is actually down from just over 1.9 million earlier in the year as we continue to enter into repayment agreements, as well as refer our tenants to the services of the Commissioner of Housing so that we can properly maintain tenancies at the same time correct the outstanding balances that are due. So one category here is on the bottom graph. You see the 275 over the green. That is the unmanaged arrears. Just to mention, the average rent from our tenants is $560. So to have an average unmanaged rental balance of 275 ensures that our tenants are getting swift action from staff and assistance that they need in order to maintain their tenancies. With regards to the vacancy rate at the end of July was 1.94, which was still under the service manager's threshold of 2% for the corporation. We had a relatively slow move out, and the August numbers have trended in an extremely positive nature, and our current vacancy rate actually sits at 1.6%, which is a historic low for Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation. With regards to the maintenance and work orders, currently during the month of July, there were 8,665 work orders submitted to our staff. Our staff commit to a two-day turnaround, 2 business days. So they completed 89% of those work orders over the month within 2 business days. And the vendor work order percentage was slightly lower as we worked with TCHC and the vendor management team in order to bring that in line. I will mention here that, as Jill was saying, as a result of the annual unit inspections, this number is going to go up. So far from the number of work orders that we've generated, it's been almost 2,300 work orders that have been generated by staff, which is almost doubling the work that our 416 employees are completing on a monthly basis. Pest control, which is a key area for the board and was a subject of the Quality Tenant Improvement Project. 321 units were declared bedbug free, 152 were declared cockroach free. I am pleased to say that we now have a move forward on the full building cleanout, which was one of the recommendations of the QIP project with regards to pest treatment. There will be a tenant information session on September the 14th at the building, which is 3330 Danforth. And then the teams will engage and kick off the inspections and the work within the community on September the 25th. And we'll be reporting back to the committee on the outcomes of that. With regards to administrative requests, again, the teams mostly are responding to supports for documentation, and you can see that 11% of the supports that are being sent to our senior services coordinators are with outcomes of the annual unit inspection, where they're finding tenants that require assistance within their unit in order to maintain their tenancy and continue to age in place. That brings us to the end of the dashboard. Any questions?
Thanks very much, and I'll pass it over to Brad. I did want to say for those of that you are new, the vacancy piece has been an area that was particularly of interest to this group, particularly when we have such a housing crisis, and I'm particularly pleased to be seeing that number coming down and all the work that it takes to actually move someone out and have the apartment ready for the next person to come in. Maureen, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Linda. Am I muted or no?
You're good.
Okay. First of all, to Brad, I just wanted to say I don't know whether you're working 24 hours a day or if you've got a big whip that you crack, but you know the numbers that you're putting forward are just incredible. The direction you're going in is marvelous. So thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. A couple of questions here. One of the pieces around the pest control, the difference between requests and people who actually need the treatment. There are a lot of people that won't come forward. Are you finding through your extra staff that you're able to locate those people and work with them to get them to come forward even though they don't want to?
Yeah, that's a great question, Maureen. What we recognized was through the annual unit inspections and going through that and having our own staff on site that we're able to train our 416 superintendents on things to look for and things that may be triggering with that. We did identify a number of tenants that hadn't previously reported pest infestations that we're now assisting them with and monitoring them for follow-up.
Okay, that's great. One other thing here. Are there any stats to compare? You've given us numbers here about how many people that you've assisted with unit prep. Is there a number to compare that with, or the number that used to be able to get assistance for unit prep? Has that gone up?
So previously what would happen is that we would, when TCHC, we would provide unit prep, but we would provide it through Toronto Public Health, and generally it was provided through their bedbug team, which would provide any prep assistance for residents struggling to prepare for roach treatment or rodent treatment.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've done is when we expanded our environmental health team is that we allotted staff and some budget to assist units with prep and assist units with preparing their units for pest treatment. So it's gone up because we monitor the number that are 18, and out of that, I believe 6 of them are prepped by Toronto Public Health, and the rest are internal resources that weren't available last year.
Okay, and the beds that are provided, is that through public health as well?
No, it's through a program that public health supports, but TSHC purchases those beds and those frames for those residents where we can't salvage it.
Okay, thanks, Brad.
Thank you, Brad, and thank you for those good questions. Is that a new program, Brad, that had we provided? I was very impressed by actually replacing the beds. Is that a new initiative as well?
It's an initiative that's been in place for some time through Toronto Public Health and their bedbug team that allowed us to purchase them. Previously, they were purchased by Toronto Community Housing, and now we purchase them directly. And just with the on-site supports that we've provided and our environmental health unit being in place, we've taken a lot more advantage of it.
That's great. I don't recall us actually reporting on that previously, so that's great to actually have it added in there. Does anybody else have any questions for you? I saw your hand up briefly. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. And just to echo some of the sentiments you expressed, Linda, as well as Maureen. Thanks, Brad. Great report. The one thing that I look for when I see this report is to benchmark the requests against the service level. And when you look at it, I think it's quite impressive in terms of our ability to respond to the various categories of requests in a very timely way. I have a straightforward question, though, Brad. On slide 6, where you provide the report on the pest management, I was wondering, besides the units that are declared bug-free and the ones that are also treated for cockroaches, what happened to the residual amount? Because when I look at the 2342 and the 321, 702, and 497, I'm just wondering what's that residual number? What does that represent? The ones that we haven't gotten to, or the ones that were inspected and weren't treated? Perhaps you can help me understand that number a bit.
Yeah, so through the chair, what happens when you're treating a unit for pests? Oftentimes they require multiple treatments. The cycle for bedbug treatment is 3 treatments over a 6-week period.
Okay.
That. The other thing that we've really impressed upon our staff and we've worked with our labor partner on is developing what's known as a block inspection. So when a unit reports pests, we don't just inspect the unit that reported the pest, we inspect the neighboring units as well. So oftentimes when they're inspected, they'll be found pest-free. And we keep inspecting and keep expanding that block until such time as we find no pests. So you end up with a few of those where we've sent the vendor in just to receive the report that says that unit's pest-free.
Thanks. And if I may, Chair, I just one other quick question regarding the arrears. I mean, I know that some of it is referred to OACH and some of it is handled administratively by our staff. Do we know what that split is?
Yeah, through the chair. I'm just going to find the right slide. 1 second. On the arrears slide, if you look at the bottom, the arrears, average arrears per stage, those reflect the different stages. So the first stage refers to tenants that have been issued an N4, then there's a legal filing and order. And the OACH ones are included in the local agreement.
The local agreement, okay. All right. Okay,
the way the relationship works, OACH does not enter into agreements for repayment with the tenant. OACH recommends that TSHC enter into agreements with the tenants for repayment as the landlord.
Okay.
They're all included in that one category.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
That's great. The good questions and good questions. Maureen?
One quick one. In the write-up that you've done prior to the charts here, Brad, you mentioned scorecard with additional services and functions for coming down the road. What would those be, those additional services and functions?
That was a request for an updated dashboard that the board had made some time ago, and I believe it's the dashboard that Grant's going to review with the committee later on.
Oh, thank you.
Great. So anyone else? So thank you. I think this is, it's great actually as we get more and more familiar with this dashboard. I think we start seeing, where things are moving, and I know that our new members will actually have that chance as well. If you have any questions after though, feel free to reach out. But good stuff, and I was particularly happy about the small amount of arrears, because that to me says that there's something proactive happening, because we don't want to actually have a situation where people are really in a situation where they're never going to be able to actually catch up. So that's terrific, and keep up the good work. So thank you for that, and thanks for keeping kind of massaging the appearance of the dashboard so that we can understand it. And thanks everybody for doing your homework and reviewing ahead of time. There were good questions. So with that, I think that is for information as well, and we're going to move on. I don't think I see any other hands up. We're going to move on to the Tenant Town Hall update, and I think Brad, you're going to give us an update on that.
Through the chair. So the Tenant Town Halls were a joint exercise, communications, operations, and the programs and partnership team to present one town hall in each of our 83 communities over the year. So year to date so far, we began in August. We've completed 14 of the Tenant Town Halls and had a total attendance of 417 tenants and an average of 32 tenants per town hall. There's 8 more town halls scheduled in the month of September, and the topics are an amalgamation of frequently asked questions that we've got, whether that's through the listening tour from STAC, from virtual tenant town halls that we've had. So we run through a PowerPoint presentation at the town hall that really it's an introduction to the regional team. The meetings kick off with the community services coordinator, and then the regional operating manager takes over, introduces them to introduces the tenants present to the senior services coordinator, the tenant services administrator, the superintendent, make sure that tenants are familiar with the roles as they're relatively new to them. Then we get into the maintenance and capital repairs, where we review the number of work orders. That completion percentage for the region is reviewed, as well as any recent capital works that we've completed, as well as some of the future projects that tenants can expect to see going on within their community in the next year. We then speak about aging in place, relates mainly to the SSC, their ability to make referrals for services for seniors, as well as gets into accessibility modifications and ensuring that tenants understand that the corporation will modify their units in order to allow them to age in place. We review some tenant engagement, the CSC role. We talk to tenants about how they can get engaged in their community, how they can apply for funding. We end up with pest control, which is some tips for tenants on how to limit pest infestations, tips for ensuring that your unit remains pest-free, or how to report pest issues. And then a question and answer period follows. We're really happy with the turnout. The operations team and the CSCs have had fantastic tenant participation at these events, and we'll be completing them within the remainder of the calendar year. We've got a lot of excellent feedback from the tenants on things that they would like to find out, and we're keeping notes on that. And we'll work on a 2024 town hall deck. This isn't a one-shot thing, and we'll be back next in 2024 to review with topics that we've heard are themes within their communities.
That's great. Any questions? This, for anyone who's tuning in for the first time, this local tenant engagement has actually been a real focus of this committee. And what we heard from tenants is that, we can't wait for people to come to us. We need to actually be out there, and we need to be, developing really strong relationships and following up on action items that come up. And it's good to see that that people seem to be responding to that. Any questions or comments about the town halls? Councillor Morley, go ahead.
Thanks, through you, Madam Chair. I'm just curious if there's any, and apologies if you mentioned this already, Brad, if there's any engagement from other partners or other senior serving organizations within the local areas for each of the buildings that are involved at all, or invited to participate in the town halls for information sharing or other sort of, breaking down barrier opportunities.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Great one. We've had a lot of reach out with regards to some of the agencies that we partner with and trying to coordinate dates. It doesn't always happen where they're available. What we've generally done at a few of the town halls is provide them a table in the back of the room where they're able to interact with tenants after the session during the question and answer. We've even had our colleagues at Toronto Community Housing come out with some information packages for them on waste management and vertical living and things like that.
Fantastic. Thanks, Brad. Glad to hear we're thinking along those lines. I think it's an important consideration when we are about wraparound supports for our seniors each place. There's only something we can do, right, as a landlord, and I think those connections with holders are good to keep in mind. Thanks for that answer. That's great.
Great, and I know that that sometimes board members are interested in being a fly on the wall or sitting in those meetings, and I know that the opportunity is there for us to attend. I know when I first started with Toronto Community Housing, I just sat in a lot of these meetings. It really gives you a feel for for some of the issues. But thank you for your commitment to that. Any other questions, comments? This flows nicely into our communications piece. And I think that if there aren't any questions, and welcome, Councillor Christiane. I noticed that you joined us. We're delighted that you're continuing on as a board member as well. And I know that you regularly bring really great perspectives from your engagement in your community as well. So the next item is actually a communications update, and we do have a deputant for this. So I think Bill Lohman is providing a deputation, and what we try to do for our new members is the deputants have 5 minutes to present their perspective on a specific item, and then we give the board members an opportunity to ask questions for clarification. We don't tend to get into a long dialogue, but more around clarifying what the point is and making sure that we actually have sometimes feedback from our staff as well when it's not clear. So
I have a question.
Oh, sure. Thanks, Jim. Sorry, I didn't see your hand.
I wanted to find out if there is a way of the board members being provided with a list of the upcoming town halls. You mentioned you may want to visit some of these, so I would like to do that myself. I'd like to find out where they're going to be.
Absolutely, we can share the schedule out.
Thank you, Brett.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Jim. And that would be terrific for you to attend. And yeah, just jump in if I somehow or other missed your hand. For some reason, I'm only getting six faces on the screen at a time. So if I miss anyone, feel free to shout and holler, and I won't take it personally. Thanks, Jim. So over to our deputant, Bill, who is also no stranger to our meetings.
Hello.
We have
Hi,
Bill
Bill.
Loman on the line to debate item number 10.
You hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Ms. Bada, and members of the Quality and Tenant Engagement Committee and senior management. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. I'm going to say, first of all, that I am grateful, very grateful for the opportunity to be a participant in this process that has been unfolding for the last couple of years. It is a rewarding opportunity to meet and engage with people on many different levels. And personally, it's been a very valuable experience of learning on many fronts about policies and process and people's personalities and purpose and patience. I'm wondering if you had a chance to see the attachments that I submitted. I can imagine that you might be wondering a bit as to what you were supposed to see or to get out of them. You know, I think about back in 1921, the accountability framework said that tenant engagement consisted of a couple of newsletters, flyers, and a starting of the stack. And I mean, we have really come a long way since then, as evidenced by the reports that's before you today. And we're now moving into one that receives a very active effort to establish a new tenant engagement model. It's a difficult process, you know, to process ideas clearly and respond logically when there's ambiguity and vagueness that confuses understanding and can create some misguided responses. You know, it creates a sort of a cognitive bias where decision-making can get affected by a lack of information. You know, communication is vital in any context, especially when critical matters are being addressed. And I want to speak to the idea that the tenants are being denied the scope to give proper insight to in understanding the big picture of what is taking place here, and to fully participate as equal stakeholders, as a voice in that process. And to that point, I want to speak about the BMG project and to the packet that I sent. One is about the new engagement model. One is about how it was introduced to stack members. And the other is the scope of the project that I had asked for. And if you look through them, what you'll see is that there was two tenants. There was no conversation about any other entities other than staff and tenants. And when BMG introduced the framework for the new model, it is essentially the integrated service model and really not tenant engagement. So here is a point where how these words that we use can misconstrue and misconvey and, you know, end up leading to situations that do not really enhance the efforts to build trust and respect between staff and tenants. So I think that's, you know, but that point aside, what I have seen and what I'm experiencing is, as Maureen stated earlier to Brad, it is quite remarkable. And I look forward to further participation and benefiting from this effort. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate your thoughtful comments and the points of appreciation. I don't know that everybody has actually had the chance to review all of the package that you sent, Bill, but I think what we can do is get Arlene to give us an update on this, and we can take this under advisement in terms of the comments that you've made and actually the material that you've sent to us. Does any questions, or does that make sense to the board members? We probably need a little bit more. And I know, Maureen, you're quite involved in this as well. Any points of question or clarification to Bill? Yeah, Maureen?
Councillor Morley, I think you were first. Did you want to say something? No? Okay. I think we're entering into new ground here. In the past, with Toronto Community Housing, we had CSCs. Community Service Coordinators. A very tiny piece of their job was to connect tenants to more or less group services. Now, in the present, with our new mandate, providing services to seniors is a much bigger component of what we are to do. So that is inevitably going to come into and be part of tenant engagement because it is part of engaging. So I think right now there's still, I don't know if I would call it ambiguity, but it's like we've got all these, I'm a kind of a simplistic visual person. We've got blocks from both sides, the ISM and the tenant engagement. And with the upcoming workshops, we're kind of going to be throwing those all in the air and seeing how tenants want them to land. So it is going to look different than what it did before. And there is going to be a bigger service provision component. But I think that these upcoming workshops are the opportunity to see how tenants want that to look and how it can work together, how both can work together. And we have to, as Bill stated, it's not all about services. Tenant engagement is also about listening to tenants and tenant rights, which is a piece we can't lose as well. So I don't know if that helps to clarify anything. But
yeah, thanks. Thanks, Maureen. I find it helpful. And I think that what we're talking about too is that a lot of the work that we're doing is overlapping. And it's hard to actually sometimes just, talk about one thing without engagement is pretty broad. So thanks for your comments. Maybe what I will do is pass over to Arlene to give us an update. And if there's further reflections from Bill's comments or Arlene's, then we can open it up. Over to you, Arlene.
Thanks, Linda, and thank you, Maureen, for your comments, and Bill for your deputation. My presentation today, the materials that we were going to focus on was particularly around communications, but to speak to Bill's comments relative to engagement, we're firmly planted in midair, I think might be the way to characterize where we are with engagement right now. We are working with the system that we brought over from Toronto Community Housing and trying to migrate to a system that is more reflective of the senior tenant demographic that Toronto Seniors Housing represents. And in so doing, we are trying to ensure that we are including the voice of tenants along the way. I continue to be grateful to the guidance of Maureen and Jim in helping us to shape the work that's coming up in the co-design sessions. We have also had many interactions with tenants broadly through the engagement process around what the new tenant engagement model could look like. And we have had conversations also with existing tenant leaders to get their perspectives and their thoughts on what they'd like to see. And this co-design session that's coming up on the 19th and 20th of this month and the 3rd and 4th of next will bring tenant leaders, and that includes staff members as well, tenant leaders, staff, and providers together to have a conversation about what the path forward looks like. And I know Bill and I've had several lengthy conversations about the work that's being done around tenant engagement. And I know there's sometimes there's a desire to separate the way we think about things and kind of hive things off into little boxes. And I think when Bill and I talk, sometimes he says it's about apples and oranges. And I said, well, Bill, it's a little bit more like a pomelo, because it's not as simple as apples and oranges all the time, because mostly when it comes to the services and support pieces, we have the same organizations providing service as well as support, and standing up different areas of health and wellness that we as a single entity cannot do on our own, and we rely on the services of already funded partners through the system to work together to deliver services. And that's a real focus for us moving forward, is being able to be more collaborative, but not just with the partners. We are taking a very different stance around how we want to collaborate. And when we bring forward some other materials later this year, you'll see that through tenant engagement and through work that we're doing around policy, all of this work, we're slowing down processes in an effort to actually get better at doing the work of listening to people's voices across the spectrum. So I hope that helps to speak a little bit to the work that we're doing around the tenant engagement piece. The focus of my update today was going to be on communications, and I'm certain that everyone's had a chance to go through the package, but I'll just highlight just a couple of things for you. First of all, there's a tremendous amount of work represented on those few pages, and it's no small feat to do what we're doing with the small team that we have, which is throughout this organization. The comms team is not unique in this way, but I thought it would be a good time to provide an update to this table about the work that has been done. Just quickly, there was lots of deliverables through Q1 and Q2. You'll see that one of the key things that we do within this portfolio is after a board meeting, we instituted, after all board meetings, we institute an update to staff in the community by having a video update, so that there's a reference point around what happened in the board meetings. We also provide updates by way of senior speak and the community letter, which again, with the community letter, while we send out a missive, so a print or a digital format, we also provide information through a video, so it's summarized for folks that can have access to it that way. And all the materials on our website is AODA compliant or on its way to being AODA compliant. And if it's on our website, we try to ensure that it's legible in the correct format, so things can be translated real time. But we are committed to doing translations of materials for tenants. So we have a fairly robust process around making sure we are able to support things like senior speak and translating those into 6 languages. And the reason that's 6 is because those are the languages of requests that we get. But when we get a request, if we get a request once, we figure it's probably going to happen again. So we translate it again for the upcoming issues. We continue to support staff, tenants, external stakeholders, and we do a lot of project work as well, as you may have seen with the production of our annual report, which is quite a project that starts in December and concludes in June. And so it's quite a process to get that work done. And we, from time to time, we deal with media requests, but we don't have a big footprint in the media or social media, as you'll see from our data. Our constituents do not spend a lot of time on social, so most of our communication is valued by our audience if it's face-to-face. Thus the town halls, the face-to-face meetings that we're trying to get back into place, and some missive communication, be it by email or by posters or by presentations that we will give at meetings and things like that. So that's primarily how our audience likes to receive information. So that's what we've been doing so far. And then if you're looking at what's coming up in Q3 and Q4, we've got work to do on the interim strategic directions, which is we posted to our website recently. And we're going to be delivering building profiles on the website. You may recall we'd had a request some time ago about providing building profiles. So, tenancy issues and program and partnership pieces for tenants and anyone who would like to access it. And so we're working to deliver that by Q4, at least the first version of that. We're also supporting the pest management pilot and several IT projects. I want to circle back on the September 30th Truth and Reconciliation Day and how we're supporting that work. We are supporting it by ensuring that there's some social media postings around that. I'm working to ensure it's in our staff bulletin, so staff are aware of that. We'll make sure that it's raised at our co-design meeting, and we'd also like to include a mention in all our tenant town halls for awareness, so people can take actions as their heart guides them to do so. We will also be supporting through Q3 and Q4 the tenant engagement model work, the tenants survey, the employee survey, and we have a couple of quarterly meetings coming up with tenant leaders, and that's really a terrific forum to hear what's happening in communities for the community services coordinators, and we will also be continuing to support the CEO tour. So that's just a quick overview of what the team has been doing and has planned coming up. And there's a definition of terms, because there's a set of terms that are used in the report that's probably not clear to all. So hopefully that helps. Thank you.
Thanks, Arlene. Any questions about the communication plan that is clearly tailored to the audience of people that live in our buildings?
I see Maureen has a question.
Thanks, Maureen. Go ahead.
I think Fareed had his hand up first.
Oh, sorry, I can't see.
I always defer to you, Maureen. I'll go after you.
Feel free to go first, Maureen, and then we'll let Fareed jump in.
Two questions. One, I know this has come up in the past, and I don't know if there's a monetary restriction or what's going on. When it comes to the translations, it's great to see that the posters are going up in different languages. But when you have a poster that is in a different language, calling a tenant to an event or a building meeting, and then there's no one there to translate, not only are they going to leave, which they do, but they're not as likely to come back. So what happened to the idea of staff having the translation apps on their phones so that those people can be heard and communicated with at building meetings? My other question is, I'm wondering why we work with United Way. Is that historic? So those are my two questions.
Thank you for your questions, Maureen. So on the translation piece, so we post in languages, of course, with our commitment to having translation available, and then interpretation services are also available if we have meetings and tenants request that they are coming to a meeting. So you're showing up at a meeting and I'd like to make sure that I'm accommodated. We certainly do accommodate that. As it relates to your more specific question on translation apps, the staff, anyone with a handheld device can use Google Translate, and I've seen staff using that. I think sometimes in the bigger group settings, it's a bit challenging, but certainly we are able to provide interpretation services, but we do require notification so that we can arrange that, because unfortunately for meetings and things like that, it's not an on-the-fly service. We actually have to give them a bit of warning and ask a couple weeks in advance.
So if I'm going to use an example, if a poster is posted in Chinese and you get this new interest from the Chinese community, is there something on that poster that says you need to request accommodation?
To be quite honest, Maureen, I don't think it's quite that explicit, but in talking, when a tenant makes a request to come into a meeting, like they want to participate in a meeting, we always make that accommodation. So we would make that arrangements. If the tenant shows up without letting us know they were coming, which has happened, we do our best to accommodate. And I was actually in a meeting where that happened a couple of weeks ago. We do our very best to communicate, to accommodate. But on the fly, when you're having lengthy meetings, it becomes an accommodating in that context is a bit difficult. It's not possible because we're using the Google Translate. It doesn't keep up. Yeah, so it does require work on the tenant's part. And so if the tenant says that they want to come, they can identify to a community service coordinator or a senior services coordinator, and we will make the arrangements to have someone there.
So maybe that good advice that Maureen's saying, maybe we could just check that there is actually some communication on the posters that actually gives that kind of direction, right?
Yeah. Thank you, Maureen. And then your other question, Maureen, was around, sorry, was it around why we support United Way?
Yeah. Why specifically United Way?
United Way is widely supported by city corporations. So it is the charity of choice that we support at this time.
Thank you.
Thanks for answering that. And Fareed?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And thanks, Arlene. That was a great presentation. Lots of work. I guess my question has to do with the efficacy of our efforts. And I'm looking at tons of activities going on. How are we measuring the effectiveness of this? And you touched on this somewhat, because I'm seeing a lot of social media posts and all that sort of stuff. But I'm wondering if our target audience is our tenants. Are we reaching them? And if not, how can we do better? And then the second question has to do more or less with the truth and reconciliation piece. And you talk a bit about the social media posting and looking at other ways that we can recognize the month and the day. And I'm also wondering whether or not something like a poster campaign wouldn't be helpful as well for our, especially for our seniors. So one is the efficacy of our efforts, and secondly, looking at other ways of reaching out to our tenant population so they can also participate and recognize and reflect on the whole truth and reconciliation initiative.
Thanks for the question, Fareed. In terms of efficacy, we are looking to our upcoming staff and tenant engagement survey to give us some really important touch points and good data to check for efficacy. For our social, we have, you'll see the data that's in the package. It gives you some sense of what we have been doing in social and how people have been interacting with us. We also have data related to our staff bulletin that would tell us, penetration rate in terms of use, open click rates, and how long people are spending on articles. And I think in that case, we've got probably a click-in rate at about 92%, which is extremely high for internal communications vehicle. So we haven't yet done a proper analysis by way of, tracking a year, but that's the purpose of the tenant and staff survey, to be able to give us both an internal and an external view of our efforts so that we can have a baseline from which to work with for our planning for next year. Does that answer your question, Fareed?
It does. Thanks, Arlene.
And then
thanks, Madam Chair.
And thank you for your comment around additional work around a poster campaign to support truth and reconciliation. I know that we've also internally encouraged staff to pursue learning and development through programs that are offered through, I think it's Alberta. They have an Indigenous program that's available, yeah. And staff have been encouraged also to follow through and do their learning that way.
Great. Thank you very much. That was a great report and great questions and comments. Jim?
I would just like to comment about the training of staff. I think that especially around Indigenous cultural awareness, it's really important in dealing with Indigenous issues to actually know the history of why a lot of people who are Indigenous feel the way they do. It really opened my eyes. I've worked with the Indigenous community. I'm mixed blood and worked with the Indigenous community since I came to Canada. And yet, when I took that course, I learned so much that I didn't know about the way Indigenous people have been denied certain rights. You know, the right to language. That was only restored and recently, really. The right to speak their own language and to have their own religion. Religion was outlawed, you know, all of these things. A lot of people don't know that. So kudos to getting the staff involved and learning about these issues.
Yeah, and maybe you can let us know over time, maybe from our people leader, how we're doing on that engagement on the Indigenous front, because I think it's one thing about offering, it's another thing to sort of get some sense of how many people have taken it up, and maybe with a particular focus on housing and why is actually Toronto seniors community housing, in my perspective, not well represented with the Indigenous community. Are there things that we're actually doing in our processes that actually are colonial and present barriers to accessing housing for those that might be in need? So takes it a little bit deeper, but I think our seniors population would be up for that kind of conversation too, and so look forward to that. Thanks so much. I don't see any other questions, so I'm going to, I think this is also for information, so we don't need an approval. The next item is actually an update on our strategic directions. And for those of you on the line or new, or just a reminder that this committee is not only involved in tenant engagement, but we're the strategy team. and so we're looking forward to hearing the updates on our strategic directions. And I think that's over to Grant. And then after that, we will actually go to our guests to have the presentation.
Thank you, Linda. Through the chair, so I'll provide a brief update on a report that we've included in the package today. We've called it the Interim Strategic Directions Progress Report for Q2. And so what this report highlights, if you recall, at the April board meeting and then subsequently at the August board meeting, we provided an update on the interim strategic directions, the roadmap, the dashboard, and those details. And there was an aspect that we would return with quarterly updates on progress. So this is really the first progress update on the interim strategic directions and how we were doing on the things that were specifically aligned in Q2 of 2023. So there are two attachments that highlight the progress in different ways. So the first one that's on the screen is the dashboard. So the dashboard is, and just to kind of articulate this in respect to the dashboard that Brad showed earlier, there are some details on here that are higher level key performance indicators of some of the same type of information. However, this is the overarching set of KPIs that aligns into the strategic direction. So this, for example, on this first screen is the strategic objective 1 KPIs. And you'll see what we're showing here now is Q2 results associated with a number of key indicators. And you can see them on the screen around work orders, pest treatment, community safety, occupancy rate, unit turnover, arrears, the financial standing of households and households in arrears as well. These are the higher level views of some of the more detailed slides that Brad had earlier. And I'll just Q2 view. So it goes up until June of this year. And our intent is to do a quarterly view of this dashboard. So this is really some Q1, Q2, and then Q2 only specific stuff. If you go to the next slide, thank you, Fatima, for sharing this. If you go to the second slide, this shows the key performance indicators that align with strategic objectives 2, 3, and the 2 enablers in our interim strategic direction. So you can see a number of things in strategic objective 2 around how, a number of engagement indicators, even some of the context around online engagement that was being discussed a moment ago, and the tenant action funds. And then in strategic objective 3, you can see things around the programming and building activities. So that, very high level summary views, you can see they're increasing, for example, between Q1 and Q2. And then some at the bottom, the enablers, some of those metrics, in particular the staff vacancy and turnover, will be starting to be reported in the next view of this dashboard and the statement of operations. This particular dashboard is the version that we took to board, and our intent is to work with this particular version going forward and ultimately refine it over time. There's a lot of information on here, and we may change the view in terms of how it's presented to continue to try to make it as easy as possible to sort of absorb. I'll let the committee know as well that this is also now posted on the TSHC website along with the interim strategic direction. So the dashboard is now publicly available there, aligned to that. The other thing that's included in the package, and we don't necessarily have to bring it up, Fatima, but I'll just note, is of the initiatives, strategic objectives, and the initiatives that were scheduled to be completed in Q2. There were 11 initiatives, and all 11 of them were completed as scheduled. So that's a good result for our first report back. And you'll see the type of level of detail we're looking at presenting for this. And then our intent is to bring a further update back for the Q3 and end of year results later this year. The intent of this material really is to bring it to quality and tenant engagement in advance of taking it to board, because this is also the board level dashboard. So I'll open it up for any questions.
Thanks, Grant. And just more a process, actually more a visual. It's very challenging to actually read all of that on one slide. And I'm assuming that we've made it more accessible for the board, because we, particularly as a seniors corporation, we've made a commitment to being accessible. It wasn't very accessible on the screen just now for me. It is better in the package, but I know that we want to actually kind of combine things, but we might find that it's actually hard to review. I bet it's actually better on the screen, on the website though.
Yeah. So no, to that point, we acknowledge that the view right now is something. It's kind of a work in how we're going to try to make it easier to view. Yeah, you can zoom and whatnot, so it's a little easier to view on the website. But to that point, we are still and plan to work with the communications group on how we can enhance the way this is presented visually, either committee packages and also for the website. Ultimately, we'd like to see something that's a little more interactive and people can kind of expand and sort of be in sort of more summary level. Right now, we're working within the context of the way we've developed really the dashboard, but we will look to improve that over time.
And just anything that we should be, like, it sounds like we're making good progress in all of the areas. Is there anything that jumps out that you want this group to be aware of before it goes to the board, Grant?
Nothing in particular, other than I think we're pleased with the progress and how it's how it's demonstrating and aligning into the interim strategic directions. We're really committed to using the interim strategic directions as a guide for this organization and measuring to that in the dashboard or the summary of the initiatives, or even how we line it up with performance planning, for example, in the organization. The results are generally trending in directions I think that the committee and board would see as favorable. There are definitely still areas that we are working on in terms of improvements within the context of that, and they align back to some of our earlier work and things like the quality improvement projects as well, for example. So there are some summary pieces in the staff report about some of the progress and more specific results. There's nothing that I think stands out as a significant concern beyond what I think some of the things that were discussed earlier with Brad on the operational dashboard already. And those are things that are being focused and worked on going forward.
Great, thank you. Any questions from anyone?
Thanks, Linda. If I may, I mean, thanks, Grant.
Go ahead,
great presentation, and obviously a lot of work being done to meet the direction. The one comment I have, though, is that I find that the highlights or comments perhaps can be embellished a bit, if you know what I mean. And I know that, for example, on the last one you identify, which is an employer of choice, you talk a bit about a compensation package, but I think, the organization offers our employees a lot more than simply the financial compensation. All the work we're doing around the tenant engagement, the idea piece, the issues around service delivery, the satisfaction that staff derive from the work that they do, I think should perhaps also be highlighted. So I don't want to pick on that particular one, but I find that some of the comments and considerations in the highlight section perhaps should be looked at in a more comprehensive way.
through the chair, thank you for the feedback, Fareed. One of the things we can do is return to the more detailed list of KPIs that were developed.
Yeah.
This dashboard is intended to be a subset and trying to really pick some of the primary or key indicators, but to your point, there are other indicators. And so we'll return back and take a look at those and see if there are some other components that we can reflect in there. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Good points. Hi, cutie pie. So Maureen, I wasn't talking to Fareed. I was talking to the little one on his lap.
The little Fareed, yes. Very quick question, because I know we have our guest here. One of the pieces that I don't see tracked in whether it's because it's a combination role is the piece around our SSCs. That's a new role, and their job is not uniquely captured anywhere, and I'd like to see more information on that somewhere. So that's it. Just moving forward.
So through the chair and to you, Maureen. So what we can do is, I think as a follow-up, we can provide additional information to yourself and the committee and board members on the role of the senior services coordinator that articulates the type of work that they're focused on. There are some communication materials that we have on that we've used to help to inform different stakeholders, including tenants, to understand the role and how the SSCs can help. But yes, we can share that if that would.
Oh, no, I understand their role, but where is their work captured?
So, that's fair. So their work is captured. There are some other KPIs that would align into some of the administrative service requests, for example, that aren't on this dashboard, where some of their work would be captured in more detail and the type of supports that they actually provide to tenants, for example, referrals and some of the other things that they do. So there are other KPIs that aren't here. So that's a good piece of feedback. That's what you're getting at. Okay, I understand better now. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. And it's super, actually. I think that this feedback is helpful as it's still work in progress in terms of how we actually move forward with this. Any other comments or questions? I don't think I see any other hands. Great. All right, thank you very much for that that overview, and this one is for information as well. So we don't need an approval, and we're going to move again to our guests. And I see Councillor Thompson and your co-presenters have been with us. Actually, I'm hoping that you sitting in our meeting gives a flavor of the richness of this committee and what we're focused in on. And I will pass it over to you, Councillor Thompson, for an overview of the item that you want to bring forward. And welcome.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good afternoon to members of the Quality Tenant and Engagement Committee. Madam Chair, just before I proceed and I introduce my co-presenters, I am thoroughly impressed and informed by the amazing amount of work that's actually being done on this very important issue. I'm energized, actually, and so had I not had a conversation with Mr. Amin and Crisante some time ago about an initiative that myself and staff were about to engage in. The staff members are Dr. Janani Sariachi, who is a foreign-trained physician who's working in my office, and Marilyn Mishinsky, former NPP in Scarborough Centre, and as well as a minister in the provincial government some time ago. Marilyn is one of my many bosses who are members of my community. And so, Madam Chair and members of the committee, it is through the work that I do as a councillor and the various engagement and outreach by members of the community who are seniors and very opinionated members of our community, actually, about matters and issues that are of great importance to them. I realized that I either didn't know enough or weren't doing enough. I apologize if you can hear some noise. There's some construction going on in the building, and of course it hadn't happened all along. It just started this moment, so I apologize. And so we decided to undertake some work in terms of fact finding to understand what we can do about the concerns that were being brought to our attention by our senior community members about the quality of life, some of the conditions and challenges, health and other conditions that they were facing and so on. And so we undertook to do some work and to consult. This is not a complete body of work at this particular point in time. It's ongoing. But as a result of the conversation that we had with Mr. Min and Crescentier, it was decided that perhaps at some point when we were farther along the road with respect to the body of work that we would have an opportunity to present the draft document to this committee and to do a brief presentation and to do an engagement in terms of having questions and also input some ideas and comments from members of this committee and so on. I must also say that I had an opportunity to meet with Jill and team and do a bit of a run through the document and so on. So we are here today. And so with that, Madam Chair, I'd basically like to get started, and I'll maybe just ask Johnny to just maybe just put up the first of the pages of the slide, please. I think we are sharing screens already, so. And can you hear me okay?
We can, yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the title is a Seniors Action Plan for Change. And again, we're looking at it from my ward, Scarborough Centre, Ward 21. But of course, we know that this has broader application. And we've looked at the City of Toronto's senior strategy report and other documentations and so on. But this is an opportunity for us to engage and to talk with our seniors. Next slide, please. I'm going to run through this part rather quickly because there's probably nothing here that I can tell you about the numbers that you don't already know, given the conversations that I've heard so far. But really just to say that, by 2031, 1/4 of the city's population will be over the age of 60. And it goes through in terms of the bars on the chart there and talks a little bit about those of age 85 and older. It is projected that that is going to be a fast-paced growing age range in the very near future. Next slide, please. This slide again is a more demographic information, which I'm sure you have and have access to. But with respect to in our area, we've looked at the ages of those who are working between the ages of 19 to 64. As well as Scarborough's population in general and so on, reflecting of those ages who are ages 14 and older. But what is of great note to us and importance to us as part of this particular research and the work that's being done is the 12% of the population age 60 and above that is projected to grow by about 30% to the age of seniors by 2041. So next slide, please. We also found that by 2030, which is approximately 70 years from now, we will see for the very first time in our history that we will see that the elderly population will be much greater than that of those who are considered children and teens between the ages of 0 to 19. And so next slide, please. And so that obviously presents opportunities, challenges, and it's important then for us to understand the environment that is really of note to those who are in the age category and an age range that we need to ensure that there's a better quality of life for them. And we are looking at the issues around ageism and loss of sense of purpose for many in this age category, as well as financial insecurity, finding, of course, the right care provision that is needed for those individuals, as well as the issues and challenges that individuals in the category are facing on a daily basis. with, doing simple tasks as well as mobility challenges and so on. We see more and more seniors in my community, whether or not they're utilizing walkers, canes, or other devices, and are in need of assistance in terms of helping to do the day-to-day tasks that they would take for granted for the most part, but as a result of age and so on, and challenges in terms of physical challenges, there are some limitations with respect to being able to perform those tasks that they would otherwise take for granted, and mobility issues, as well as access to healthcare services and good quality, healthcare services and so on. There's a real need as we build communities in my area of Scarborough. We're building out the Golden Mile, which will have some 60,000 people living in the area between Victoria Park and Birchmount Road. We also have to ensure that the services, the amenities that are needed for this category, this group of citizens and residents and so on, that we build those in as we build and prepare for new dimension, new elements of our community and so on. And we'll also incorporate the end of life preparation and so on. And I've spoken with many people who have not thought about it and are not in the process of preparing, are not even sure what to do. I think it's important for us to have a better sense of understanding in general, and that the category of people in these areas are able to have access to information to assist them in terms of preparing, and of course at the end of this is all about the quality of life, because these are valuable individuals and assets to our community and so on. And for some, they feel a loss of engagement, loss of sense of purpose and so on. And I think it's really important for us to ensure that that does not continue, and or that feeling. So we have a system and mechanism in place to be able to create a better sense of understanding, better sense of security, a greater understanding, a greater sense of self and purpose living in our community. The next slide, please. So our goal with respect to this body of work is to present and develop an action plan which addresses the needs of the advanced and aging communities confronted by many of the points I've just raised earlier with respect to diminish physical and mental, as well as the emotional health aspect with respect to how people feel and how they are taking on the daily challenges of existence and so on. And of course, I believe that it has to be done in a very purposeful way, in a way that has integrity, a way that gives individuals a sense of purpose. At some point, we're all going to be older than we are today. We're all going to be in a position where we need a little help from our community, our society, and just in general. So some of the basic principles of the action plan that myself and the team are working on is looking at inclusiveness, resilience, respect, caring, and of course, compassion, which is extremely important as part of our sense of understanding. I know I was just, as digress for a quick moment, I was working with a member in the community, a senior member, and she indicated to me that, while she's trying to deal with her children, she is now realizing that her memory is not at the level where it used to be, and it is creating such a challenge for her and so on, and she's trying to hide it from her children and so on. And of course, I suggested that she really needs to sit with her children and talk and work with them, and so that they could help her, because I think that would be a better situation as opposed to living in fear. And so next slide, please. Thank you. And so the content of this report, and we did submit a copy of the draft to committee members and so on. We have a basic introduction and an overview, and we looked at social isolation, issues around housing, which is not just impactful on seniors, but many other groups and category of individuals in our society. Health issues around transportation. We had a call just yesterday from someone who is at that point where they need transportation from, for example, Wheel-Trans, and weren't sure as to about how to go about it, how to register and things of that nature, and to create those type of roadmaps and sort of on ways to connect with those varying areas in our communities. It's extremely important. We looked a little bit about employment. We've heard from some of our seniors that they are looking to continue to work. For example, that's helping for those who are able to, of course, they would like to be able to have that opportunity. And so we need to build that into our plans for our seniors and so on. Abuse and neglect. This is an area that is not well, I guess, talked about and or not well perhaps defined in terms of some of the challenges that some of our seniors are having. I know as a local councillor, I receive calls from many of our community who are feeling that they are abused and are being neglected and so on. And so it's really important for us to be able to identify and address some of these issues. I'll just go into the next one in terms of social isolation and talk a little bit more about that. So we know that social isolation and loneliness, despite being different, are in fact connected and can deeply impact the quality of life for our older adults and members of our community. The physical, emotional, and mental health of older adults are also directly impacted by social isolation. I saw this firsthand in numerous instances in my ward as a result of the last 2.5 years of COVID and the challenges that have come for so many, but particularly for seniors who are living alone and limited interaction with respect to talking or the face-to-face communication that is so important to this group of individuals. And there are also other proactive steps older adults can take to help to reduce the harmful effect of social isolation and loneliness and so on. But we know that they can't do it by themselves. And so it's really important for us to be aware and have a greater sense of understanding of the importance of us having in place opportunities to be able to help and to engage and create that interaction to minimize the level of isolation as well as loneliness and so on. And so it's important for us to have in place opportunities to be able to engage. And the next slide, please, in terms of looking at some of the social activities and ways that we can promote social interaction. I note that technology is not necessarily the friend of many individuals who are in this category. However, there's a great opportunity for us to be able to look further in terms of how we can use technology and social media to create that sense of connection and so on, because it's an opportunity for those individuals to learn new skills as well as interaction with the community, your neighbors and people in the community, and to be able to feel connected. And of course, more importantly, to be connected with family members and friends and so on. So these are some of the areas we looked at. Some of the percentage of people who are using some of these types of technology and or these types of ways in terms of how to interact to reduce the loneliness and social isolation. Next slide, please. We looked at housing, and of course, I don't have to really tell you, members of the Quality and Tenant Engagement Committee, about housing. This is the activities that you are fully engaged and invested in as part of Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation and the committee work that you do. But in Canada, almost 6 million seniors represent a very complex and dynamic cohort with diverse living arrangement and, of course, housing needs. And of course, in Scarborough, the seniors housing ranges from, of course, living independently in single-family dwelling to living in residential care with 24/7 nursing and other form of cares. And I think it's really important to ensure that we have the facilities, we have the space going forward, And as I said earlier, I don't have to tell this committee about that because this is what you are, your focus and mandate is in terms of how to assist and engage and help those individuals to ensure they have a place to live and to live in a very healthy and dignified way. So we also looked at health. As the population ages, we know that more and more people in our community require specialized health care to meet their unique needs. And we know that the body, the dynamics, the mind, things change in such a way as we age. Sometimes the changes are gradual, sometimes the changes are much more accelerated and so on. So in our plan, our goal is to make Scarborough a very healthy place. And as we talk about Scarborough, I mean, you can change the word Scarborough to any place in Toronto or any place, but our focus has been in Scarborough Centre Ward 21 based on the basis of our work. But we know that this is not a unique situation as it applies to residents in Scarborough Centre. We know that this is broad-based and it has implications citywide and beyond. And so, we want to look at ways where we want to recommend several actions that look at better access to healthcare and higher quality of healthcare and, of course, value for our money. We have identified in Scarborough, for example, one of the areas around health and the needs. We know that there's a great need here in Scarborough and Scarborough Centre for dental care and work that needs to be done to help seniors. And we have our mobile, bus that goes around. But also in my ward, we have a facility here at the Scarborough Civic Center helping seniors. And we have identified that through the medical officer of health, Dr. Davila, and her team, that is not even enough to respond to the need that exists here. So one of the things that we're advocating for an additional facility here in Scarborough to help those seniors who are in need and have challenges paying for, obviously, some of the cares that they need. And of course, I just focus on dental, but there are many other areas in which individuals are requiring assistance and care with respect to being well. And I'll just ask Janani to turn to the next slide, please. And so this is the wellness wheel, and I'm sure that this is not new to any of you. And we just quickly looking at the social aspects of all that we're all in this together, and we want to make sure that people are physically able, and if they're not, that we were able to assist in terms of creating an environment where they are eating healthy, they're getting the amounts of sleeps, and they're moving and getting physical activities should be incorporated into their normal lifestyle. I look at my own mom, where I talk to her pretty well every day, ensuring that she takes the walks that she has to take, and ensuring that she is connected with respect to my brothers and I. She's now 83 years old, and I speak to her, being a former nurse. She tells me of some of the experiences that some of the seniors that she socialized with in her building and so on. And so getting that information, firsthand is really important. But also from an occupational perspective, as well as an engagement perspective for seniors, it's really important for them to continue to be able to contribute, because all of them have unique talents and attributes that are beneficial to not only themselves in terms of, but also being able to utilize that in our societal elements and so on, that gives them an additional sense of purpose and so on. And we looked at things like connecting with the people, connecting with their churches, connecting with the community as a whole, and we looked at spiritual wellness as well. Now, while we know that it's not, politicians don't look at sort of religion as the other element, but it is important for people that I've been speaking with, that they talk about that. And I think it's important as we talk about wellness as being a common good, a common purpose and so on. It's also really important for our seniors to be connected intellectually and to be engaged, and again, being able to, talk to one another, talk to other younger people, talk to people in general, and so on. So these are some of the things, the attributes for wellness. And of course, there are many others and so on. And of course, the final piece I wanted to touch on here, which is with respect to finances. We have seen an increase with respect to the number of seniors in my ward specifically. And of course, I suspect that it is other wards as well. And I know it is, quite frankly, but because we're speaking, particularly about Scarborough Centre, the number of seniors that are going to our food banks, whether or not it's the Baptist Church at Kennedy and Ellesmere, whether or not it's AXA, the Agincourt Community Association, who offers food banks, whether the work that my office is doing in terms of working with companies and donors to provide assistance to these facilities to ensure that our seniors have the opportunity to be able to eat healthy, eat a warm meal or a series of warm meals in the course of the days. It's important, and we know that there's challenges from a financial perspective being able to afford some of the things that are needed. So there's a real need for our community as a whole to have a more of a wraparound approach in terms of how we help and the environment that we create to create the opportunities to help. So this is again a general overview. There's more work to be done. We actually have a number of sessions that are being planned to be able to engage and talk with more seniors in our community, whether or not be it Don Montgomery and also Birkdale and other areas as well. And in fact, we have spoken with seniors in Toronto Community Housing properties about some of the challenges, their own experiences. So we've gathered a lot of information from the community in general that is part of the work that we're doing with respect to this action plan to help us to not only demonstrate how we value our seniors as an integral part of or integral members of our community and to support them so that they can remain active and engaged and to lead an independent and productive life in comfort and of course in dignity and in great health. At the end of the day, I think it is purposeful in numerous ways. It's beneficial to our society as a whole when we reach out and create opportunities to help our seniors in advance. It could prevent certain conditions and situations that we have spoken about here today, and to help our seniors live a better quality of life. So I just wanted today to present where we are and the work that we've been doing, looking at it in a ward specific way, but knowing that it has amplification and ramification citywide and also I think nationally as well, because we know that the growth of our seniors are continue to grow. We saw the numbers in terms of what's going to happen in 2030, but also at the end of the day, Madam Chair, it's really important that all of us step forward from a common purpose and cause to ensure that our seniors have a better quality of life and a level of dignity that that's important for us to have in place for them. So that concludes our presentation at this time, Madam Chair, and we are available for any questions and any inputs and any ideas that could assist us to form a better report, because at the end of the day, if not us, for them, then who? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson, and thank you to your team as well. I will open it up, but I wonder if there's some concrete next steps. I think that as I was reading the report, I was a bit concerned about some of the things that actually this organization has also faced, which is trying to do everything and not having a pathway forward. So you raised a lot of different issues, and I guess what helped us as an organization was actually being prioritizing what was actually really within our scope, and also and being very clear in terms of what actions we were going to take. And I guess that would be my recommendations, is to be very specific around, because it's very, very broad. And I think the other thing, and I'm sure you're already doing that, is look for tables that are already working on some of the areas that you're identifying, because you've crossed health and housing and transportation. And when I think about the health side, I think about the Ontario Health Team and looking about the local team that's working on seniors issues, so that it's not hard. And the last thing I would say is, what we've learned is that we have thousands of incredible tenants that have a firsthand experience about what's important to them, and to make sure that you actually that population of people that maybe more low income might not have as many opportunities to voice their concerns come forward. So prerogative as the chair to just share some initial comments, but I'm happy to open it up to others if that was helpful or not helpful. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just before you open it up for members to be able to ask questions, I share fully your comments. In fact, we sat with Jennifer Dockery, who is in charge of the city's long-term care homes, and her expertise. We elicit comments and inputs. You're absolutely right. At the moment, it appears that we're boiling the ocean. Obviously, that is just not possible. We do have to prioritize, and that is going to happen. What, as I indicated and alluded to earlier, we are doing further consultation, because we want individuals who are going to participate in the consultation to help us to identify and prioritize the things that are more apparent in terms of what are needed. So it's a work in progress, and we are going to get there. So I do thank you for those valuable input. And yes, taking a look at it from my counselor's lens, there's a requirement for us and myself to have a real broad understanding and a broad approach to things. But in order for this to be beneficial and to provide, the ability to create effect, and to create the ability to implement and to bring about the changes, and to have the resolution of effect and benefits, we do have to narrow it down and prioritize it. But we're going through a process in order to establish those points and priorities.
That's great. Thank you. Other comments? I know that the team would welcome some of your thoughts as you saw this report, and we will get the slides to folks as well. Maureen? Oh, you're muted, Maureen.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thompson, for this report. It's thorough. Your team did a really good job on this. There's a couple of points that, 3 points actually, that I want to make regarding the statistics that you had at the beginning around the population, or the percentage of people that will be 59 and older. I think at this point we all kind of assume that we all know these numbers, and yeah. But I think that those numbers have to continually be pounded home, because as we move forward, budgets are going to have to be shifting, and we have to start pushing those numbers right now. So I'm glad that they were part of the presentation. The other thing, there's 2 things that stood out in the package that I received. On page 14, there was a mention of the Housing Help Hotline for seniors for housing emergencies. And that really stood out for me, because right now we have the rapid rehousing that assists people that are seniors that are already homeless. But this is something that's different. It's for seniors that aren't homeless yet. but they're in a state of emergency. And, that's something that needs to maybe be looked at down the road in a similar venture as the rapid rehousing, because there is going to be a population there of people who have worked, that don't have high incomes, and when they start switching over to pension, they're stuck. The other part that stood out for me, and you reflected in your comments on this, was the health literacy. There's a psychological stigma to aging, and it does keep a lot of people, as is in that one story that you told about the woman being afraid to tell her children that her memory was going. I think that there's an old historical stigma that you move along and then boom, that's it, you're in an old age home. And we are now expanding on this whole middle section. And I think we have to normalize that conversation around changes that happen during this period, so that it's an open public topic, and that so seniors are more comfortable coming forward. And my last comment is the engagement sessions that you have planned, when they get finalized. I would welcome more information on where and when those take place. And again, thank you.
Thank you very much for the comments, and we would be delighted to provide that information. As you pointed out, the engagements are being planned, and we would love to provide you with that information so that you're aware. And just on the final piece, I mean, I touched on it about the concerns that we have found some seniors have about articulating their health changes that are taking place to family and even close individuals to them. For some strange reason, I say it's strange, but I understand it. There is a fear, a reluctance to articulate it and just to say to a loved one that there is a declining aspect with respect to their health and well-being for a variety of reasons. And we need to normalize that in a way that it isn't something that people are afraid of expressing, because it makes so much sense that if there's a level of awareness that something can be done to assist and or additional care and attention is given to those individuals so that they're able to help.
I think Councillor Christiana has his hand up. Please go ahead, Councillor.
Yes, thank you very much. That's my virtual hand right there.
I like it.
So, Councillor Thompson, first of all, I want to commend you and your team for capturing, I mean, in its entirety, what I think we all know what the needs of our seniors across the city are. I mean, you certainly captured many conversations I've had with many of my seniors, and one thing I didn't realize is that somewhere here, I think I read that Scarborough's got about 13-14% more seniors than the rest of the city. So clearly, we're all going in that direction. We're all getting older, so we certainly have to. Oh, let me just turn my video on. I realize it's not on. So we certainly have. There's certainly a need here to address all these. I'm also quite impressed with your action plan. So I just a comment and then a question. You've got a great action plan that I think your action plan is something that will likely be distributed between, as I think Linda said earlier, we'll see what part of this is within our scope in this committee to address, and we certainly will. Then there's council, of course, that can address a number of these issues. Then, of course, we have our provincial and federal counterparts that need to address maybe some other issues. So have you given some thought, Councillor, how we can begin to implement your great suggestions that you have here? Because I'd be fully supportive to work alongside with you to ensure that we do what we need to do on council and we do what we need to do here in this committee. And there's so you've done a lot of work here, and I'd hate to see it not get implemented in a timely, reasonable manner.
Thank you very much for the question, Councillor Crisante. And yes, you're right. So we've had some discussions with Dr. Davila with respect to, bringing through some of the recommendations to the Board of Health, for example, potentially, as well as obviously we want to ensure that this is ready for prime time as it relates to the budgetary process and identifying as well what additional support we can get from the other levels of government, because I do intend to, send copies of the final report off to the other two levels of government to ensure that there is at least an understanding and awareness, along with the GTA members of both the province, provincial government, and the federal government. So there's a plan that's being worked on in terms of how we bring this forward and introduce it. The worst thing that we could do is develop a document like this and let it sit and typically collect dust, quite frankly, and it is not helpful or instrumental in bringing about the desired changes that we need to actually respond to this growing challenges that's existing for our seniors or elderly members of the community.
Thank you, Councillor. That was my question. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to give Fareed the last comment.
I think Jim had his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Jim. You get the, and we'll get both of you. Jim, you go first.
I just wanted to say that what struck me was that your study says that 60% of the population will be seniors by the year 2030, which kind of coincides with a recent study that showed that 60% of the GTA will be living in poverty by the year 2030.
Yeah, isn't that scary? And that's exactly something that we need to note. Yeah, and we really have to move on this. It's really important for us not to sit back. So, but thank you for that recognition, Jim.
And Fareed, and I'll make sure I haven't missed anybody else as well. Thank you for your patience, Fareed.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor. I mean, I think this is a really good report, and just to echo the sentiments expressed by Councillor Crisante as well, I think there's a lot of issues. This is a good inventory of the challenges faced by seniors, not only in Scarborough and your ward in particular, but across the city and perhaps beyond as well. I think what I would suggest, and I think this is where you're going, is for us to perhaps pick a couple of priority issues and then pursue them in a more targeted way by way of advocacy or some of the committee structure that you spoke about, Councillor. We are going through the budgetary process now with the City of Toronto, and I know the city has some real challenges vis-a-vis its operating budget, but it might be some consideration here because I think we're all saying the same thing, and we're all sort of coming from different perspective on this, whether it's us or the TCHC or the city itself or the Housing Secretariat. So I think we can find some way of collaborating and coordinating those efforts so we can be a bit perhaps more impactful on the strategies we put forward.
This way
of priorities. So
turn it on quick.
So thanks. I appreciate the report. And as Linda said, we've got a fairly limited role in terms of next steps, but we're more than happy to join the advocacy initiative and try and do whatever we can to affect some of the recommendations that you and your staff put together.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson, and thank you to your team members for coming. It's wonderful to see the work that you've done, and I think you hear that there's support from this group to work forward. I want to thank everyone. We also pride ourselves in trying to finish our meetings on time, and we're just actually wrapping up. I want to remind people that at the end of this meeting, we will actually be sending out a survey to board members to get feedback on the effectiveness of the meeting. We're always open to suggestions, and we will be looking for that. We will also be sending out, hopefully we can get a copy of your slides, Councillor Thompson. I think they would be helpful to have the shorter version. And I think we also will send out the, make sure that everybody has the deputation notes that were circulated as well. Any last comments? Otherwise, I'm looking for an approval for adjournment. Oh, Councillor Christian, is that a new hand?
No, it's still the old one.
Yeah,
Apologize.
no problem. No old
Thanks
hands.
very much, Linda.
No
Good.
old hands. They're
Back to
all
the,
legacy hands.
good to see everybody.
Thank you very much.
He has many virtual hands.
Yeah, it was your virtual hand. Yeah. So, well, thank you very much. I think
Hey.
it was a good meeting, and from my perspective, but we welcome your feedback. Can I have a call for adjournment? Someone to move?
Councillor Crescienti and Maureen.
Perfect. Thank you. And all in favor,
Thanks,
yes.
Linda.
And thank you to all the team. We really appreciate all the support that each and every one of you provide. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you all. Have a great afternoon.
Take care. Okay.
Bye. Thanks, Jim.
Bye-bye.